Hello, my dear Franken friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabas Vixen. How horrible of you to join us. Curl up, invite your friends, and by all means, make sure those lights are out. That way it's harder to tell what may or may not be lurking around you. There's nothing like a good mystery, am I right? Tonight will feature a singular tale of devilish design, curated by those wicked weavers of woe. And without further ado, allow me to pass the reins on over to our vivacious voiceover virtuoso, Trey Falco, for tonight's sinister story. Please keep all limbs and side covers at all times. We wouldn't want anything to go missing now, would we?
What the fuck are they? I asked him. I don't know. I already told you that. I don't know where they came from either. I don't even know how long they've been here. Maybe they've always been here, living among us, preying upon us. He fell silent. Go on, I told him. Tell me the rest. He shrugged. That's pretty much it. Until I stumbled upon you last night. I sat there, absorbing everything he had just told me. I was floored. I hadn't suspected just how big this thing was, how far it reached. I tried to grasp the scope of it, the enormity of it, and the implications. I asked him, how many of them do you think there are? I mean, total. You mean in the world? Shit. I couldn't tell you. Well, make a guess, I pressed him. You know more about this than I do. Jeremy thought about it for a moment and then shrugged. Thousands, at least. Maybe even a couple million. I think we still outnumber them by a comfortable margin, for now anyway. I was quiet for a while, mulling over it all. We have to do something, I said finally. Like what? Like tell someone? Who do you want to tell? The police? The military? The government? They think we were nuts. No one can see these things but us. Nobody can help us. We're on our own. We can't be alone. There must be others like us. People who have had brain injuries and... He cut me off, speaking derisively. Maybe there are, but even then we're talking a handful of people at the most, scattered around the world. What? You want to start a resistance group? How the fuck are you going to find them? You going to hold a conversation? Put out ads? Have you experienced a head injury and can now see the soul-sucking monsters lurking among us? Join us for our first annual meeting. Are you going to provide refreshments? I've been dealing with this shit for 10 years, and you're the only other person like me that I've ever met. Frankly, I was convinced I was all alone before last night. And the odds of the two of us meeting were probably 1 in a billion. It was just luck. We happened to be in the right place at the right time last night. You probably stand a better chance of winning the lottery 10 times in a row before you come across someone else like me. He fell silent. Neither of us spoke for a while. I was lost in thought. Jeremy was right. Assuming there were others like us who could see these things, we were too far and too far scattered to do each other any good, and had no way of finding each other. So what are we gonna do? We aren't going to do shit. You're going to have to figure out what you want to do about this on your own. I looked at him, confused. What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, after tonight, you're not gonna see me ever again. I'm gonna stay out of your way and you're gonna stay the fuck out of mine. We're each gonna do our own thing by ourselves. Wait a minute, I said, feeling alarmed. You can't just abandon me like this. We just met. You're the only one who knows what's going on. Hey, I don't know shit. I already told you everything I know. What the fuck did you think? We were gonna team up together and fight the forces of darkness as a duo? You've been watching too much Supernatural. It's dangerous for us being together. How the fuck so? I demanded. Do you think those things are stupid? You think they're not aware that a few people are aware of their existence? No, they know. Someone's been picking them off one by one. They just don't know who. Every time I go after one, I'm putting my ass on the line. Each time, I don't know if I'm being led into a trap. We're a risk to each other if we stick together. I don't know anything about you, and you don't know anything about me. If we teamed up and they got one of us, they'd torture us to find out who the other one is. Then we'd both be dead, and who the fuck would be left to fight them? Not to mention if one of us got busted by the cops. Jeremy, I started. That's not my real name. I don't want you to know anything about me, and I don't want to know anything about you. I just wanted to meet you because I thought you had a right to know what the score was. I thought you deserved to know what was going on. And I'll give you a little advice. Just forget this whole goddamn thing. Ignore them and try to live a normal life. Pretend it's not happening and you might be more happy. A haunted look came over his face. Frankly, I wish that's what I'd done right at the start. I mean, what good can two guys do fighting these things on their own? There's no way we'll ever be able to stop them. I'm leaving now. Don't follow me, and if you see me in the city, don't try to talk to me or approach me. I'll run. Stay the fuck away from me. He stood up from the bench and turned to leave. He threw me a final glance. Think about what I said. We weren't meant to know about this. There's a reason most people can't see them. We're freaks, you and I. For all we know, those things might be part of the natural order. Good luck. He took off, jogging down the path, disappearing into the darkness. I never saw him again. It was nearly midnight before I returned to my apartment. I sat at the table, thinking about everything Jeremy had told me. I looked at my TV. I hadn't watched much TV since the headaches had gone away. I'd been too busy lately dealing with work and this nightmare I had gotten myself mixed up in. I remembered what he had said about watching the TV when I got back. I turned it on and watched. I changed the channels rapidly, and I couldn't believe what I saw.
Finally! We've been trying for eons to reach you about your plow horse's extended warranty. Please remain on the line while we transfer you to one of our account fairies. While I'm sure you'd love to get back to that living nightmare, I've got something far more exciting. One of our wretched sponsors. Tell me, listener, have you been having trouble down there? There's no reason to be embarrassed. It happens to everyone at times. It even happened to my grandfather. That's where Brainy Bob's Grave Services comes into play. When you just can't possibly get those old bones up like you used to and roll around in your grave, Brainy Bob's delicate caretakers are here to assist you. On call 24/7 whenever you're feeling in the mood. I guarantee you'll be left feeling like your younger self. Please seek an apothecary if symptoms last longer than 4 eons. It could be considered a mystical emergency. Brainy Bob's Grave Services, shaking the dust off dysfunctional bones since 1203. I suppose now it's time to return you to your story, though you really should look into that plow horse warranty.
There were so many of them. On the news and on talk shows and game shows and infomercials and commercials and TV series and movies. Shadow faces with glowing red eyes. And a lot of them were pretty famous. Movie stars and politicians and pro athletes and musicians. I won't name names, but you'd be shocked. Some of them had starred in the movies I had seen at the hospital after I had recovered from my surgery. Some of them were the film sex goddesses I had found myself lusting after. Now that I could see their true appearance, I felt repulsed. An alarming possibility occurred to me. I switched back to the news. They were covering the upcoming presidential election. The president was speaking at a campaign rally. To my immense relief, he was not a shadow face. But my relief was short-lived when, after the rally was over, they cut to footage of his opponent, some blue-blooded wasp asshole who had a reputation for being both a sneering elitist and a religious fundamentalist, who was distinctly not human. I felt my stomach turn over. God help us if that thing won the election. Thankfully, a few weeks later, it lost. But it was a close call. This raised another thought. I got on my laptop and began doing some research. I knew now that I could detect those things on TV, but would my brain be able to register them in photographs? I began checking out old photographs of famous historical figures going back to the beginning of commercial photography in the mid-1800s. Once again, I was blown away by what I had found. They had been around for a long time, at least 150 years. Several former US presidents, world leaders, rulers, noblemen and royalty, along with celebrities from the 20th century, all now long deceased, had been shadow faces. Some rather infamous ones included Lyndon Johnson, Governor George Wallace, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Pol Pot. It wasn't just political figures or movie stars who had been shadow faces either. Several notorious terrorists, criminals, and serial killers, including Charles Manson, also hadn't been human. I closed my laptop, my hands shaking a little. Christ, how far back did this thing reach? How far down did the rabbit hole lead? And what the fuck was I going to do about it? I had a sudden brainstorm, an epiphany. I jerked back in my chair as if I had been shocked, wondering why I hadn't thought of it sooner. Dr. Steiner. The man who had performed the procedure on me that had been the cause of all of this. I knew he was human because I had seen him after the onset of the crippling migraines that had signaled the start of my second sight, or whatever you wanted to call it. I hadn't spoken to him in a few weeks, ever since he had run a CAT scan on me to try to discover the source of my headaches. But I had his number. It had been 6 months since my surgery, and I suddenly found myself wondering if he had performed the same procedure on anyone else since then. Other people who might be able to see them like Jeremy and I could. I had to speak to him. Now. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. It was going on 2 a.m. by then, so I figured he was probably asleep. I left him a message explaining who it was and that I needed to speak with him urgently, as soon as possible, and then hung up. I went to bed, and after an eternity, I finally managed to drift off to sleep, determined to call him in the morning and find out if there were any other patients who had undergone the same surgery I had and had reported the same strange migraines I had experienced. I didn't wake up until close to noon because I had been up so late the night before. I had to be at work soon and didn't have time to call Dr. Steiner. I cursed myself for sleeping in as I raced to get dressed for my shift, leaving my apartment knowing I wouldn't be able to call him until I got off this evening. I checked my phone on the drive to the supermarket, but there were no new calls or messages. Dr. Steiner hadn't called me back. I figured he was just too busy. My shift seemed to drag by, moving at a glacial pace. I didn't think it would ever end. I was on autopilot the whole time, not really paying attention to anyone or anything. My coworkers and friends noticed how distracted and agitated I seemed and expressed concern. I told them I was still recovering from the bug I had had the last few days. An eternity later, I punched out and drove home, forcing myself not to speed. I sprinted to my apartment, and the first thing I did was dial Dr. Steiner's number. Again, it went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, I threw my phone down and got on the internet, doing a search for him online to see if there was a different way I could contact him. I didn't have to search for long before I found something. A news article, dated only a week before. I read it, feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach, a feeling of utter hopelessness. I groaned in despair and lowered my head. The article's headline read, "Prominent neurosurgeon Carl Steiner, 67, dead in car accident."
Welcome back, my darling deviants. Well, tell me, did you enjoy that twisted tale? Of course you did. I knew you had that air about you, that hunger for the horrific and the macabre. So, did we spook you? If not, then file a complaint with our complaint department detailing all accounts of non-spookiness you found in this video, and we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 millennia. Give or take a business eon or two. However, if you've enjoyed what you've just heard this evening, then make sure you leave a like on this video and annihilate that subscribe button. Such a small act of obedience is exactly what we need to put the food on the table around here. There's only so many days we can have refried kidney and toe jam hash before I'm absolutely sick of it. Spoiler alert, that ship sailed long ago. Now, I must bid you adieu. I've many things to take care of, and this outro is eating into my day off. Run along now. Have no fear, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you another terrible tale. Go forth, my ghastly gang, and stay spooky.